Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So once again, good morning. Namaste. So good to be with you. As has been said a number of times now, our first face-to-face meeting as a congregation will be on July 4th. We'll gather here at 11 a.m. on that Sunday. We should all be fully vaccinated by then. The festivities of the day will include short talks on Swami Vivekananda and Swami Prabhavananda, some songs, both spiritual and patriotic, and a potluck lunch. Won't it be wonderful to share a potluck lunch again? Watch your e-newsletter or check the website for any further details. To help prepare for that first Sunday face-to-face gathering, there will be 2 Seva Saturdays in June, next Saturday, the 19th, and the 26th. We want to get this center both outside and inside, ready to receive you in great style. For these 2 days and the 4th, those members who have been fully vaccinated will be welcome to participate. As happens every year, but it's worth noting, your center will be closed in August, and the resident minister will be unavailable for that month. It's not sure whether there is going to be a trip away from the center or not, but at least there's going to be the need for rest and recreation. Evening arati will be done by initiated devotees in the chapel shrine. And we're going to see if that can't be Zoomed. That attempt will be made.
Could I interrupt? Probably not Zooming that.
Okay, very good.
Because it would require me being there every day for arati, and that's not going to be possible. Sorry.
Well, okay. I'm glad that was brought into view. Well, we may offer people the opportunity to do arati from their own home shrine then, so that it can be Zoomed for people who wish to join that can't get here physically. All right. Again, welcome. The topic, of course, today is a continuation of the discussion of Samkhya cosmology, having to do with the 3 Gunas. So it's part 2 of last Sunday's talk. June is a month for the study of Karma Yoga, a spiritual path leading to the abandonment of selfishness. As a karma yogi, you practice offering your actions and their results, as well as your perceptions, thoughts, and feelings to the divine presence. Even before fully knowing this presence, you hold firmly to the belief that the presence is within each person or other living being that you interact with or serve. Working and abiding in this spirit, you are increasingly able to release attachment to your activities and their results. This yields the freedom and contentment promised by Karma Yoga. As Sri Krishna says in chapter 2 of the Gita, even a little practice of this yoga will save you from the terrible wheel of rebirth and death. And we'll explain the context in which he says that a bit later on. So I said, the topic today is Samkhya Cosmology Part 2, the three Gunas. Now, I'm going to repeat the caveat that is said before practically every talk. This is not something that you are expected to believe. This is not something that you are expected to receive as dogma or revealed truth. It is an explanation that attempts to capture some aspect of the reality we share. If you find something valuable in it, take it, use it. Those things that you do not find valuable, just simply ignore them. It's not a matter of must or should or any of that kind of thing. It is a sharing of an understanding from here that may be useful to you, may not. Take from it what you will. So with that, I'll begin this morning's talk. This is a short poem called a tanka, a Japanese form, and it goes like this. I haven't taken leave of my senses, Bob. I've come to them. What an endearing truth Scrooge tells so well about awakening. I haven't taken leave of my senses, Bob. I've come to them. What an endearing truth Scrooge tells so well about awakening. The truth, reality as our teachers do their best to describe it, is self-evident when we can trust the testimony of our senses. I'm going to repeat that. This is foundational to what is being explained today. The truth, reality, as our teachers do their best to describe it, is self-evident when we can trust the testimony of our senses. As it was with Scrooge, we do not trust them. This is because, like him, we are prisoners of our doubts, fears, attachments, and aversions, and our favorite self-descriptions. I'm too old to change, Scrooge cries again and again to the spirits who are giving him what he needs to change, and that ultimately does change him. But he clings to that again and again. He says, oh, find some younger man. I'm too old to change. We all have our favorite self-descriptions. They're called upadhis in Sanskrit. They're just another way we limit ourselves. So what are we offered this morning that can enable us to change, to come to our senses? In Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna's explanation of the four yogas, especially karma and Raja Yoga, is rooted in Samkhya philosophy. The better you understand Samkhya, the more likely you are to make practical use of what Sri Krishna tells us. Samkhya is a Sanskrit word that, roughly speaking, means counting. Krishna says that when you fully grasp the operations and functions of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, you will be free of attachment and therefore free of the bonds of karma. And the gunas are very much, though they're not any of the 24 cosmic principles of Samkhya, you'll see that they are that which is used to create everything that is created within the Samkhya cosmology. Sri Ramakrishna taught that Maya, or Prakriti, causes you to believe you are the doer, when in truth it is the gunas, which are under God's control, that act. Quote, God alone is the doer. Everything happens by his will, unquote, Ramakrishna insisted. It only seems as if your actions and the thoughts you think are your own. The Upanishads, the Gita, and Sri Ramakrishna teach that they are in fact God's thoughts and actions, expressed through the agency of the gunas. I'm going to repeat that because this again is an expansion of that foundational thought. It only seems as if your actions and the thoughts you think are your own. The Upanishads, the Gita, and Ramakrishna teach us that they are in fact God's thoughts and actions expressed through the agency of the gunas. God, as the creator, Ishwari or Ishvara, God as the creator, does this because we, as Saguna Atman, want him to. We want the experience of manyness. We want the experience of sharing this creation together. And yet, as we'll see, the tools that create it can become an entrapment. But we want this to happen. And if we were aware of the game from the beginning, we wouldn't be part of it. We have to be hoodwinked in order to play. According to the teachings of the scriptures, whether they be Christian scriptures, for that matter, Islamic scriptures, or Hindu scriptures, there only appear to be all of these beings on the screen. We are creating this by our desire and through the instrumentality of the creator being and its tools, the gunas, because we want this experience of manyness, the simple love of being, doing, creating, and sharing. God as Ishvara, Ishwari, creates all this because we, as Saguna Atman, that divine presence with attributes, that is the enjoyer and the experiencer, want it so. Ishwari, Ishwari, create, because we, as Saguna Atman, want him to. As that Atman, we are the experiencer and the enjoyer, not meant to be limited in any way at all. There's no intention of limitation. It's just that it's required for us to remain unillumined, for us to continue to do this. And as Ishvara tells us, when we do get stuck, when we do get attached, she or he comes to our rescue. Christ comes, Krishna comes, Buddha comes, Shankara comes to remind us. So this morning we will explore the gunas, their source, their effects, and their mesmerizing hold on our attention. We do this partly as a review of Samkhya's explanation of how reality works, and as a discussion of what Sri Krishna tells us about the gunas in Bhagavad Gita. So having said all that, that's bound to stir some thoughts, something from your own experience to add to this, or some question that you might want to ask. So now's the time to do it before we go on with the more detailed explanation. Anything to add or ask about what's been said so far?
I'll say something. Can you hear me?
Yes, Tom.
So I was really affected by the thing you said at the very beginning about basically take what you need and leave the rest from these teachings.
Yes.
I've been thinking a lot about what exactly our community at the Vedanta Center is. And there's so many people with so many different beliefs and ideas and different practices, but we have this sort of community of people. Community is just the right word. You know, we're, whatever it is that we're doing, we're kind of doing it together with all of our different beliefs, and we support each other. And the sense of community is more important than the sense of having a common set of beliefs, or that's the way it seems to me at this point. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. So I enjoyed what you said at the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And it was very sincerely meant. And yes, we are studying together the art of spirituality. Not the spirituality, but as you pointed out, the spirituality as each of us embodies and experiences it. Because if we buy the premise that we are indeed embodiments, dwellers within a body of the divine, the infinite divine being, it must be so that each of us is going to perceive this, receive this, and express this somewhat differently. This is why there are so many books. I mean, if you look just on our little library here, so many books. And that's just a fraction of the many, many, many books and expressions of different people who have tried to say what it was that they are and they do. And some of them are dogmatic. Welcome to that. Some of them are more open, and that is more welcome from here. But yes, isn't it wonderful to have this group of people who come together this way so that we can share this? Thank you, Tom. anything else from anyone.
Could you explain wanting and choosing the manyness?
All right, the way it's expressed in the Chandogya Upanishad is at the end of the night of Brahma, which is incalculably long in terms of billions of years. I mean, it is calculated, but it's incomprehensible to our minds. This night of Brahma is a time of no manifestation, only potential. In the terms of physics, it is a time of absolute zero, no vibration. Vibration is manifestation. At some point, the cosmic consciousness, we are embodiments of that cosmic consciousness. This is the premise. That cosmic consciousness awakens and says, I am one. I shall body myself forth as many. Why? Well, there's no real way of explaining what the cosmic mind thinks, if you can even call it that. But we can look and see what the evidence is of our senses. What do we see? We see manyness everywhere we look. And for those who are attuned in that direction, which is a higher expression of reality than ugliness and competition and that sort of thing, those of us who love this sharing, this simple love of being, doing, sharing, and creating, this manyness occurs for us. We want it to, we as that divine being. Inherent in that manifestation is duality. Duality can be confusing. I like this, I don't like that. All of those, and immediately things like fear and doubt. And this is why I use the example of Scrooge. If you look at the story of the Christmas Carol, of A Christmas Carol, Dickens's story, you'll see that Scrooge is possessed by fear and doubt. And the first spirit who comes to him helps him understand why. What it is that's occurred. I mean, Dickens was a master psychologist. So we then get stuck. It's not meant that we get stuck. It's just a natural propensity of duality. So Christ said in his shortest teaching, which is one of the Logians in the Gospel of Thomas, Christ taught, be passers-by. You take, you enjoy, but you don't get stuck. You move along. Or you let it move you along, as it's said in the Tao. So we want this experience of manyness. And this day of Brahma also goes on for a long, long time in Earth years, billions upon billions of years. We're only, according to one way of reckoning it. We're only about 10% into this day of Brahma. And its manifestations are essentially infinite. Does that get it, Beverly?
Yes, that's very good.
Thank
So
you.
essentially, what we are wanting to learn is to not be stuck in the manyness, but recognize that the manyness is really the one.
Yes, this is what happens when we get weary of the manyness, because individually, as embodied beings, we do become, as Sri Chaitanya says in his prayer, we become weary souls. So he recommends that we bathe in the name of the divine, that bath for weary souls. And so we weary of this manyness and wish to be released. It's called liberation. And we'll talk about that a bit later on. But this is the thing about duality. We're both meant to and not meant to be stuck. We can't stay and enjoy the manyness if we don't get stuck. On the other hand, the stuckness is a limitation of a being that is inherently limitless, unlimited. And so after a time, that begins to pinch. It becomes, as Swami Prabhavananda says in his book, The Spiritual Heritage of India, it becomes an unbearable ache. And so
Thank you.
wish to be released. You're welcome, dear. So welcome.
Very helpful.
Anything else from anyone?
I have a quick request.
Yes.
Like only 9 people have their, or let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 people have their cameras on. It's so much fun to look at people. If you have a camera that's working, turn it on so we can see each other. Thank you.
Well, uh, everybody feel free to do as they please. But if you wish to honor Tom's request, I can second it in a mild way. It's nice to see.
It's nice. Tom's off. Tom, it's just some people, some of us are on Zoom a lot, and there is a thing called Zoom burnout. Because when you're on screen, it's actually, especially for those of us who are sensitive to these things, it's more stressful actually than even being in person, because you're just on the whole time. So going on and off camera is, I think it's a self-care thing for some of us. Bye.
I, as I said, I share with Tom the joy of seeing you if you choose to be seen. But if you, as Cindy just very capably said, if self-care requires that you protect yourself this way, that's certainly understood. Anything else from anyone about the topic of today's conversation or anything else?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, Swayam.
so can you repeat that part where you said either you can move along or you can let it move along?
Well, Christ said in his shortest teaching, be passers-by. That doesn't mean we don't enjoy what we're passing by. If we're in the street and there's a food stand and we're walking along the street and there's something that we want from the food stand, go, take, enjoy, and then move along. You're not going to stay at that food stand and get the rest of your food for the rest of your life there. In the Tao, it is said that you don't have to think about it so much. You just have to release your attachment to anything on the banks of the river being the river of ongoing conscious expression of consciousness. You just have to release your hold on anything that keeps you tied to the bank of the river and let the river carry you along. Again, it's just a way of thinking and talking about the same thing. Don't get stuck. And this is only for spiritual aspirants. Most people, if you talk to them about change, they'll say, no, I don't. I resist change. Change, well and good. That's none of our business. It's up to them to, at some point, if they wish, as the time arrives, to say, I do want change. I'm weary of this sameness. It's stale. Oh, Hamlet says it so beautifully. How stale are all the uses of this world. So, for spiritual aspirants, as we all are here gathered this morning, we look for how do I stop? And one of the things that is being pointed out this morning is that if we accept certain things and begin to limit our attachment, we come to our senses, as Scrooge says. This is awakening, because our senses will tell us the truth. If you want a detailed explanation of how it actually works, there's a detailed explanation in Patanjali's workbook, which is called the Yoga Sutras, and it is beautifully commented on and explicated in Swami Prabhavananda's translation and commentary called How to Know God. How this actually happens. And how the testimony of the senses is reliable.
Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome, dear. Anything else? All right. As was said, we are experiencing consciousness in manifestation, the day of Brahma. The creative tools of consciousness in manifestation, spoken of in Samkhya as Prakriti, that's consciousness in manifestation. Its tools, creative tools, are the Gunas. In terms of modern physics, or physically, a guna is a level of vibration, not a point, but an ever-varying level along a spectrum. The slowest and weakest, yet the most pervasive bond of vibration is tamas. Tamas is referred to as the concealing power. In physics, it expresses itself as the ability of things to have mass, some weight. This is given to it by the Higgs boson, the Higgs field. You can, all of these things have a physical reality. So if you want to know about what mass is, just go and find out about the Higgs boson, the Higgs field. It's what gives everything mass and therefore gravity. Gravity is the tendency of things to be drawn to one another. Atoms fall together, form compounds, then stars and galaxies, which yield us and all we perceive. The stars and galaxies, the stars within galaxies, explode, and in doing so, they yield the heavier elements. Stars are in the beginning just hydrogen. Hydrogen fusing to, under pressure, fusing to become helium. Then it all falls together, until the heat and pressure build up to an unsustainable level. The star explodes, and in the tremendous pressure of that explosion, the heavier elements are created. Faster and stronger levels of vibration along a wide band are rajas, the projecting power. Rajas is the projecting power. Radiation as heat and the properties governed by many of the laws of Newtonian physics are an expression of rajas. Gravity, tamas, pressure ignites intense rajasic activity, fission and fusion. Stars burn, explode, and thereby yield the heavier elements. Volcanoes erupt and produce new landmass. What causes volcanoes to erupt? One tectonic plate subducts or dives under another. As it does, it's subjected to intense pressure. The elements of that landmass diving under the other landmass, what happens when things get hot? They expand. So the landmass melts, expands, rises up. That's another aspect of heat. It rises up to the surface and erupts. Sometimes it erupts slowly. In Northern California, there are these vast fields of lava that oozed slowly from the ground. No great eruption, just these. In other parts of the West Coast and elsewhere around the world, there are explosive volcanoes. One of the things that these volcanoes do is produce new landmass. The Hawaiian Islands are such landmass. The fastest and strongest levels of vibration across the widest band of vibration are sattva, the revealing power. Sunlight and other forms of radiation are sattva. The words radiant and effulgent speak of sattva. So we have tamas, the concealing power, rajas, the projecting power, and sattva, the revealing power. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, Krishna says this about the three gunas. Now, if you want to know the verses and so on, you can find the notes along with the recording of this talk, and it'll all be the chapter and verses there. I'm not going to mention them now. So but it is in chapter 14. Krishna says, whatever forms are produced in all the wombs, the great Prakriti is their womb. Whatever forms are produced in all the wombs, the great Prakriti is their womb, and I, the seed-giving Father. So it is this relationship, this immediately we see within manifestation duality. The creative energy of the womb and the seed giving of we can think of it as feminine and masculine energy. We don't need to, but it's one way to think about it. Certainly that's the way it seems to work with human beings, to produce new human beings. As John Dobson says in the Equations of Maya, he says, when this happens, you get a family, you may have noticed. So Krishna says that there are these two forces together in their mating, so to speak. All creation is produced. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. These gunas, born of Prakriti, and Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, the these gunas, born of Prakriti, bind fast in the body the indestructible embodied one. The indestructible embodied one is the Atman. That is who you truly are. As you can see, if you just come to your senses, so to speak, this body will pass away. It may not seem like it today, but indeed it will pass away. So what is indwelling in this body does not pass away. It's for what this body was created. It is for which this body was created. For whom? So how does this binding happen? Sri Krishna explains. Of these, the binders, sattva, stainless, luminous, and free from evil, binds by attachment to happiness and by attachment to knowledge. Sattva, stainless, luminous, and free from evil, binds by attachment to happiness and by attachment to knowledge. No rajas to be of the nature of passion, giving rise to materialism and vanity. It binds the embodied one by attachment to action and by inference, the results of action. And no tamas to be born of ignorance, stupefying all embodied beings. Note, stupefying all embodied beings. All of us are subject to it from time to time. We all know it. That time when there just doesn't seem to be any motivation anywhere. No tamas to be born of ignorance, stupefying all embodied beings. It binds by misapprehension, indolence, and sleep. It means not just physical sleep, but the mind going to sleep, just not having any. So sattva attaches to happiness and rajas to action, while tamas, verily shrouding discrimination, attaches to misapprehension. When through every sense in this body, now note, we've come back to the beginning now. When we come to our senses, what happens? When through every sense in this body, the light of intelligence shines, then it should be known that sattva is predominant. I haven't taken leave of my senses, Bob. I've come to them. So before we go on to the conclusion, is there anything about what has been said so far that gives rise to something you want to add to the conversation, or something you want to ask about what's been said? Okay. Yes, please.
This is Keith.
Yes, Keith.
I just more of a comment. I like the idea of thinking of the three gunas as kind of vibrations. I have troubles with them. I think everybody does, because the whole cosmology is, so shall we say, cosmic. So I have some troubles with it here and there, but to think of them as vibrations is actually helpful for me. So I just wanted to kind of make that comment.
And thank you, Keith. It is helpful to think of them that way. And if you like to relate this to modern physics, just study the work of Don Lincoln, and you don't have to go very far. You can find it easily online, both as YouTube videos and writings. The work of Don Lincoln about the fact that nothing exists but fields of vibration. That is all that exists. And he is a foremost researcher he's one of the heads of Fermilab, and he is one of the principal researchers at the CERN, C-E-R-N, high-speed collider in Switzerland.
Thank you. You know, I love your reading list that you give me. That just got added. And I'm excited. Thank you.
Don Lincoln. And what this is, this incredible machine that we inhabit, is a transceiver of vibrations and a translator of these fields of vibration into the reality that we experience. Is that not absolutely phenomenal? If anything can convince you that you are not the doer, just think about all that's going on with this action and experience suit, and whether you can possibly be in any way the author and the controller of that. You can learn to manage it a great deal better by spiritual practice. You can learn even to become a great master of its properties through yoga, Raja Yoga. But just to stand in awe of it as a devotee, it is creative. It is capable of this sharing. It is capable of thought. It is capable of translating all of our experience into this next moment and this next moment and this next moment. It's just incredible. It really is, if you let your mind rest on it. Incredible what this action and experience suit does. Thank you, Keith. Anything else from anyone?
That was so wonderful, Shankara. Thank you.
You're welcome, dear. Anything else? Okay. I haven't taken leave of my senses, Bob. I've come to them. This is Scrooge trying to explain to his clerk, Bob Cratchit, why he is behaving so differently. And as Swami Swahananda used to say, the only true measure of spiritual progress is change in behavior. Overnight, Scrooge's behavior changes from the darkness of tamas and rajas to the bright light of sattva, in part because he has come to trust the testimony of his senses. So going on with what Sri Krishna says, greed, activity, the undertaking of actions, unrest, lust, and longing. Greed, activity, the undertaking of actions, unrest, lust, and longing. These arise when rajas is predominant. And by that, it does not mean spiritual longing, of course. It means longing for the results of action and for sensual gratification. Darkness, inertness, misapprehension, and delusion. These arise when tamas is predominant. If the embodied one meets death when sattva is predominant, then that one attains to the spotless regions of the worshippers of the highest. I'll repeat that. If you can manage to, through spiritual practice, be in a sattvic state when you leave the body, if the embodied one meets death when sattva is predominant, then that one attains to the spotless regions of the worshippers of the highest. Meeting death in rajas, he is reborn among those attached to action. So doing in tamas, in other words, leaving the body in the state of tamas, he is reborn in the wombs of the irrational. Notice there's no accusation. It's just not rational. When the seer beholds no agent other than the gunas, when the seer beholds no agent other than the gunas, and knows that which is higher than the gunas, the Atman, he attains to my being. In other words, becomes in awareness united with the One. As Christ said, I and my Father are one. I am the vine, ye are the branches. Christ meant he was rooted in the One. He expressed as the vine, and those inseparable branches are our being. That's what it means by he attains to my being. This is what Sri Ramakrishna says in the Gospel. God alone has become all this. Maya, the universe, living beings, and the 24 cosmic principles. The 24 cosmic principles of Samkhya. God alone has become all this. Maya, the universe, living beings, and the 24 cosmic principles. And then, speaking as Ishwari or Ishwara, he says, as the snake I bite, and as the charmer I cure. So as the snake, I cause you to be within the thrall of the Gunas, and as the charmer, I cure. I rescue you. How great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. As the charmer, I cure. It is God himself who has become both vidya and avidya. Vidya means the highest knowledge, and avidya means the lower or entrapping knowledge of the three gunas. It is God himself who has become both vidya and avidya. He remains deluded. He, God himself, remains deluded by the maya of avidya, ignorance. Again, with the help of the guru being the divine being itself, expressed as these teachers who come. Again, with the help of the guru, he is cured by the means of, he is cured by the maya of vidya, capital K knowledge. You are that divine being, that thou art. Next week, we'll talk about what is meant by saguna atman, saguna. So the topic next week is who acts, who experiences. But for this week, that thou art. As Saint Teresa of Avila remarked in her poem, Every Prophet's Name, she said, it is only as us, it is only in us that God becomes so confused that he asks questions. That's what Sri Ramakrishna means when he says, it is God himself who has become both vidya and avidya. He remains deluded by the maya of avidya, ignorance. Again, with the help of the guru, he is cured by the maya of vidya, knowledge. And you are both of those manifestations. That thou art, tattvamasi. You are, and this is the summation. You are, therefore you think. You are, therefore you think and feel and perceive and act. So what is the cure? It can be said in so many ways, but I love the way Swami Sridharananda says it to us. You all heard me speak of Swami Sridharananda. He's now the head of the work in Australia and New Zealand. He's in his 90s. This is what Swami Sridharananda said is the cure. Divinize your life. Make your life a continuous, unbroken interaction with the divine. Divinize your life. Make your life a continuous, unbroken interaction with the divine, which means coming to your senses, trusting what your senses tell you, and understanding that that is the action of the divine. And so you keep that constantly in mind, a continuous, unbroken interaction with the divine. And Swami Prabhavananda, my teacher, said, whatever you do, give it a Godward turn. So think of everything in terms of the divine being, the divine presence, and its actions. Any final thoughts from anyone? Anything to add to the conversation from your own experience, from your own wishes and desires? Or,
Brother
yes,
Shankara?
yes,
I think I'm a little confused by the statement, trust what your senses tell you,
yeah.
because we are always told that the senses are limiting and illusory.
Once your vision is clear, once you are no longer imprisoned so much by doubt and fear, you just expressed a doubt. It's not a wrong thing, it's not a bad thing, it's a natural thing. Once you're able to see that doubt, that fear, that attachment, all of our limitations are just exactly that. They're necessary for the game to go on, the game that we want to play as long as we want to play it. So yes, the senses can be deceived. But as I said, if you want to, go to chapter 2 of How to Know God by Swami Prabhavananda, and you'll see a very clear description of how to replace the misapprehension of the senses with proper apprehension of the senses, truly coming to your senses.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone, please?
Brother Shankara, this is Haima.
Yes, dear.
I just have a thought. Often we self-sabotage ourselves with the narratives that we grow up with, like Sattva, Raja, Tamo Gunas, which are instilled in us when we are growing up. And those become our self-fulfilling prophecies. Often those become our self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yeah.
And to break that, we have to have something awakening experience like Scrooges, or some type of retreats that we do, or some type of disaster that happens in our life. It awakens us, then we need to change from there, see whether our prophecies, self-fulfilling ones, are constructive for us or destructive for us. We need to question ourselves. Then slowly, then we can change to like silence meditation, and then we can divinize ourselves.
Very well said, Haima. Very well said.
Thank you. Then we can get the clear vision and slowly liberate ourselves. I mean, we all are guilty of that self-fulfilling prophecies. We have all had, many of us had those.
Of course we are.
Many of us had,
Well, every one of us.
almost.
No, every one of us
You know,
is creating the world around us out of our expectations, which is another way of saying your
exactly.
self-fulfilling prophecies. We expect the world to be such and such a way,
Yes.
and lo and behold, that's how it appears to us.
And then that was supported when we were growing up. Many of us, those
Well, of course, by well-meaning parents,
exactly.
by others in our, it's what Don Juan Matus called
That's right.
gaining our membership.
That's right.
We gain our membership by learning the rules and regulations as they are practiced by others. What's permissible, what's not. Oh, don't be so dreamy, dear.
Right. That is how.
Don't be so. What they're saying is, don't let your heart guide you.
Yes.
Don't let yourself see imaginary beings, as they're called by the adults or others around us, imaginary beings. Don't let yourself see those beings. Those aren't real. Well, of course they're real.
That's right. That's right. And we become we always think the finite world. We live in the finite world for a long, long time. And then slowly, through some practices like this, congregations like this, we open up our brains and slowly find out we have to write new narratives of ourselves. What is my new story?
Yes,
That I lived all these years has. Yes, the story I have lived all these years hasn't been helping. What is my new story going to be? Next chapter of my life. Then we can slowly.
Now what you're giving us, Haima, is the therapy explanation.
In a way, maybe.
Yeah, that's and there's nothing wrong with that.
It's all spirituality.
I'm just saying that we don't need to come up with these new narratives. Awakening can happen differently than that.
Like Scrooge's, exactly.
Like Scrooge's, or as Sri Ramakrishna said, practice just a little and someone will come forward to help you.
Definitely.
Or spend 3 days in solitude.
Yes.
And cry to God with a yearning heart, and he cannot help but come forward. Come forward from where? Within.
Yes, totally agree with you.
So, and I totally agree with the therapy explanation as well. It is very helpful for us to write new narratives. This is essentially what Patanjali tells us to do in chapter 2. Replace the lower narratives with higher narratives, and then replace those yet again with yet higher narratives.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's but as has been said over and over again by so many, Patanjali is a master psychologist and psychotherapist. This is what he's up to. And then it opens into something else. But yes, you're absolutely right. But there are other ways.
Sure, spirituality is one of the best ways. Actually, the silence, meditation, really self-realization and liberation. Those come to slowly, they will come to us. We are on the path.
Thank you, Haima.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Anything else from anyone? So I'll repeat the 2 prescriptions from the 2 Swamis that are so sweet. Swami Sridharananda, divinize your life. Make your life a continuous, unbroken interaction with the divine, which is a recognition more than it is a creation. But it is a creation in the sense that you continue to reject your old way of being, or your old narrative, as Haima put it, So you make your life a continuous, unbroken interaction with the divine. And then Swami Prabhavananda said, whatever you do, in other words, your entire life, everything that you do, whatever you do, whatever you do, give it a Godward turn. Try to think of it in terms of the divine. They're saying the same thing in different words. Anything from anyone else? All right. Those of you who care to repeat after me, this is our traditional closing prayer as offered to us by Swami Yogeshananda. Let there be peace in outer space.
Let there be peace in outer space.
Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters.
Let there
Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters.
Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees.
Let there
be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees.
May the gods be peaceful.
May
the gods be peaceful.
May the whole universe be pervaded by peace.
May the
whole universe be pervaded by
peace.
Let this infinite, universal peace prevail throughout my being.
Let this infinite, universal peace prevail throughout my being.
Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. So, dear ones, for those of you who wish to join, we will have a reading and discussion group of the book Love Poems from God tomorrow night, starting at 8 o'clock. On Tuesday, we read and enjoy Swami Chaitanananda's book on the life of Holy Mother. And then on Wednesday evening, we are tracking along in Swami Vivekananda's chapter 9 of his Jnana Yoga, which is unity in diversity. So those are the next three opportunities. Next week, the conversation will be about Saguna Atman, the Atman or Brahman with attributes, who acts, who experiences. So, Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. May you go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the divine being as our mother and father. So it was such a joy to be with you today. Such a joy to share all this with you. And I want you to know that this is something we really do together. To understand what I'm saying, read Swami Vivekananda's The Powers of the Mind. What it means for us to share this energy. Whether you say anything or not, doesn't make any difference. Your presence is a contribution. So,
Thank you, Brother Shankara. Thanks, everybody.
until next time, it's always hard to say goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Hari Om.
Jai, 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 jai.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye all.